What is good? All that heightens the feeling of power in man, the will to power, power itself. Friedrich Nietzsche, the Antichrist. Would Nietzsche look at Gen Z, the generation raised with smartphones, mental health apps, and endless digital comfort, and call them weak? Before you answer, pause. This isn't just a provocation, it's a mirror. Because when Nietzsche spoke of weakness, he wasn't pointing fingers at people who feel pain, who are anxious, or who struggle with meaning. He was pointing at something deeper, the inner posture we adopt when faced with life's chaos. This video isn't about blaming a generation. It's about asking, have we lost the hunger to become more than what we are? Gen Z is growing up in a world of overstimulation and undernourishment of the soul. Depression rates are climbing. Identity feels fragmented. Purpose, often outsourced to trends, brands, or algorithms. And Nietzsche, well, he had a lot to say about that. About herd mentality, about the collapse of values, and about the courage to stand alone. But here's the twist. He didn't want people to be strong in the way we often imagine. He wasn't interested in macho stoicism or blind resilience. He wanted something more radical. He called it the will to power, the fierce creative force that says, no matter what the world throws at me, I will become who I truly am. So by the end of this video, you'll see what Nietzsche really meant by strength and weakness, whether Gen Z is collapsing or transforming, and how you can use Nietzsche's insights to break through your own inner stagnation. Let's begin. To understand whether Nietzsche would call Gen Z weak, we first need to ask, what did Nietzsche even mean by weakness? It wasn't physical. It wasn't about whether you go to the gym, hustle 24/7, or have mental health struggles. Nietzsche's concept of weakness had to do with how you relate to life's intensity. He saw the world divided not by class or age, but by two types of morality, master morality and slave morality. Master morality is born from those who affirm life. It's about creating values, taking responsibility for one's fate, and expressing inner strength, even in the face of suffering. It says, this is who I am. I choose my path. But slave morality? That's what Nietzsche feared was infecting modern culture. It arises from resentment, from feeling powerless and then moralizing that powerlessness. It's the voice that says, I can't win, so I'll say winning is evil. I don't feel seen, so I'll pretend visibility is shallow. He wrote, nothing on earth consumes a man more quickly than the passion of resentment. Now ask yourself, do we live in a culture that encourages us to grow stronger from adversity, or one that teaches us to seek comfort and avoid discomfort at all costs? Nietzsche saw the rise of a society that worships safety, conformity, and emotional fragility, not because people are bad, but because the spirit of self-overcoming was being forgotten. When Gen Z struggles with identity, meaning, and constant comparison, is that weakness? Or is it a symptom of a deeper problem? In Nietzsche's eyes, weakness wasn't feeling lost. It was refusing to confront that lostness with courage and creativity. So the real question isn't, are we weak? It's, are we willing to face the abyss and still choose to create meaning? Nietzsche believed that beneath every human action, every desire, every ambition, there's one primal force driving us, the will to power. But let's clear something up. This isn't about dominating others. It's not about control or ego. Nietzsche's will to power is the deep, often unconscious urge to grow, to expand, to become more than what we are. It's creative. It's life-affirming. It's the energy behind transformation. He wrote, "Life itself is will to power. Self-preservation is only one of the consequences of this." Now here's the tension. Gen Z has grown up in a world where almost everything is instant. Entertainment, validation, even identity. You can scroll through 1,000 lives before you get out of bed. But with so much stimulation, where does that will to power go? It gets numbed. Why fight through discomfort when the algorithm knows exactly how to distract you? Why create values when culture hands you a menu of ready-made identities? And yet, deep inside, there's still a flicker, a quiet rebellion against numbness, a longing not just to cope, but to become. Nietzsche would look at this moment not with judgment, but with a challenge. He'd ask, are you letting the world shape you? Or are you shaping yourself through the fire of your own becoming? Because the will to power isn't loud. It shows up when you face your anxiety, your boredom, your emptiness, and still choose to build something real. It's in the person who says, I don't know who I am yet, but I'll find out, even if it burns. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of strength. If there's one word that captures the heart of Nietzsche's warning to modern humanity, it's this: nihilism. He saw it coming like a storm, not just the absence of religion or tradition, but something more unsettling, a collapse of meaning itself. He wrote, "What does nihilism mean? That the highest values devalue themselves. The aim is lacking. Why? Finds no answer." Sound familiar? Swipe through TikTok, scroll past headlines, jump between identities. We live in a world flooded with content, but starving for purpose. Nietzsche predicted this, that once the old gods were dead, once truth became relative, once tradition lost its grip, we'd be left drifting. He called it the death of God, but not as a theological event, more like an existential earthquake. Suddenly, no one was telling us who to be, and that terrified us. Generation Z inherited that earthquake. You've probably felt it. That strange pressure to be authentic without knowing what authenticity even means. That quiet dread behind the endless self-optimization. That question that creeps in late at night. What's the point? Nietzsche wouldn't shame that feeling. He'd say, good, you've seen the void. Now, what will you do with it? Because nihilism isn't the end. It's a threshold, a place where either we collapse or create. That's where Nietzsche points to the next step. Not retreat, not despair, but the birth of new values, not handed down from culture or politics, but forged from within. And the first spark of that creation is admitting, the world feels empty, but I still choose to create meaning. That choice, in Nietzsche's eyes, is the start of becoming something more. When Nietzsche looked into the abyss of nihilism, he didn't say, give up. He said, transcend. Enter his most misunderstood and most powerful idea, the Übermensch, or Overman, or beyond man. Not a superhero, not a perfect human, but someone who, in a world stripped of external meaning, has the courage to create their own values from within. He wrote, "Man is something that shall be overcome. What have you done to overcome him?" This wasn't about superiority over others. It was about rising above your own inner smallness, your fear, your conditioning, your passive self. Now ask yourself, in a culture drowning in comparison, anxiety, and performative identity, what would it mean to rise? It might look like this: choosing purpose over popularity, creating your inner code, not waiting for the world to hand you one. Facing your depression, your numbness, your confusion, not as flaws, but as the raw material for transformation. The Übermensch doesn't wait to be saved. They become their own creator. And Nietzsche believed we were capable of that. Yes, even in a world that feels meaningless. Maybe especially in that kind of world, Gen Z might just be the generation closest to this threshold. Why? Because when everything falls apart, when you can't trust institutions, when identities feel fluid, when truth feels relative, you're forced to ask the real questions. And that's where true strength begins. Not in avoiding the darkness, but in saying, "This darkness, I will make something out of it." That's the seed of the Übermensch, not someone perfect, but someone becoming. So, would Nietzsche call Gen Z weak? Maybe, but not in the way you might think. Not because you feel lost, not because you struggle with anxiety, burnout, or self-doubt. He'd see weakness not as suffering, but as refusal to grow from it. And strength? It's not found in perfection or in pretending to have it all together. It's found in those who dare to face the chaos and still choose to become. Nietzsche didn't leave us with answers. He left us with challenges. He didn't want followers. He wanted creators. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. Maybe Gen Z is the generation standing right at that edge. Yes, facing darkness. Yes, questioning everything. But that's the perfect place to start. The real question isn't whether Nietzsche would judge you. It's whether you are willing to rise, not in spite of your struggles, but because of them. So take a breath. Look at where you are and ask yourself, am I willing to stop waiting for meaning and start creating it? Am I ready to face the void and plant something in it? Because if so, Nietzsche wouldn't call you weak. He'd call you dangerous. And in a world asleep, that might be the highest compliment of all.